So, for assignment 4, I decided to focus on loot addiction in the psychology of Destiny. Um, Addiction in games is real, and especially in these first-person shooters and games nowadays that are relying on RNG and specific ways of keeping you in the game uh, to do exactly what they want you to do and to manipulate you to buy more or just spend more time in the game and have word of mouth spread so more people will play and more people will stick to the game. And I also wanted to focus a little more on Destiny. It's a game that I've played for a while now since its release, and it's one of my favorites. And I felt like while researching it, I would have a good view of explaining it and how it works in the sense of addicting. So, some details about the game is that Destiny is an MMORPG, which is a first-person shooter developed by Bungie. MMORPG stands for a massive multiplayer online role-playing game. It's a mouthful. Um, First person allows you to be inside the head of your character, and especially in a role-playing game, you really feel like you're that person. And while it's massively online, you have a lot of friends and people to communicate and build a community with. Destiny in particular is the most expensive game ever made in the game industry, with a budget of $500 million. That was probably used on a bunch of things like building the game, making it look pretty, but also voice actors that in year one of the game starred Peter Dinklage, and it starred Lauren Cohen and Bill Nye, just some big actors there. Um, the number of active users today in Destiny is about 8 million a day. Back at the launch in 2014, September of 2014, it averaged about 3 million a day. So far, over 30 million people have played Destiny or have a registered character and account on Destiny itself. So, a brief synopsis about the game. While starting, you start out as a guardian, who is a soldier who has massive power, and your mission is to defend the last city, which is humanity's last sanctuary. Um, you have been given this power by the Traveler, which is an orb that has visited Earth that was discovered on Mars. And it's launched humanity and technology forward hundreds of years. A highlight is that lifespan has tripled, and while the Guardian or the Traveler was dying, it created these ghosts because the Guardian needs the ghosts, and it's your companion, protector, and your vision or your identity that you're a Guardian. Um, the Traveler has been against the Darkness for a while. The Darkness is a collection of aliens who are jealous and hateful towards the Traveler. It depends on what faction you're talking about in regards to the conflict that the two have. But a really big part of Destiny is that you get lots of loot, and that is solely the main part of the game that keeps people playing. So what exactly is loot in Destiny? Well, loot is a collection of weapons, armor, class items, shaders, emblems, skins, emotes, sparrows, ships, and ghost shells. There's certain items that are collected from various sources at random instances. It could be depending on what level you are, what planet you're on, what type of guardian you're playing, and other random variations of what you're doing. Destiny players on average spend about 3 hours a day in game, so people will come home and play for 3 hours, and that's enough time to complete certain activities and collect loot. More hardcore players will obviously play more hours, and more busy people who also enjoy Destiny probably only spend maybe 1 to 2 hours. The time that you spend in the game depends very much on how much time you have in your life. So what you see here is a screenshot that I was able to capture in the game. It's what a usual strike. A strike is a short activity lasting from anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes, and it consists of 3 players. This was the end of a certain strike on the Dreadnought, which is a very big spaceship that you get to visit. Um, and on the right, you see the skeleton key and the 2 little guns there, plus the little white items. That's what you would usually see at the end of a strike. The skeleton key is sort of a rare drop, so I was able to get that there, which is lucky. Usually you will get 2 to 3 blue items, maybe a legendary, which is purple, a legendary engram, and if you use a 3 coins, which boosts your exotic engram chance, you could get an exotic engram. It's the 3 of coins that was introduced really brought more people into the Strike playlist to complete them and to get more loot, and obviously you saw that I got a bunch there. So why is Destiny so addicting for active players nowadays? So while researching, I was able to research and find someone on Destiny subreddit that goes by that username. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. I can't really confirm their authenticity towards their research, but the depth that they went into explaining and showing their evidence was very convincing to me. I believed that it was true. So the first way that Destiny keeps you playing is a variable ratio schedule, or VR. VR is the idea that a reward is given every n times an activity is completed. They say that this is a fixed probability, so you may receive a reward every 20 raid completions and then receive it again after 2 tries. It's the same ratio that is used in slot machines around the world. Another way they keep you playing is the fixed interval reinforcement schedule, or FI. FI is based on an activity popping up on one day and the player completes it that day. Repeat that for 6 more days. This also works on a weekly basis. Destiny's an MMO, so everything is online and everything works on the rotation. So this is what the Destiny weekly schedule will look like. It continues off the fixed interval reinforcement schedule idea. Tuesday is when the weekly reset happens. It's when everything on this page will reset. Wednesday is when the gunsmith weapons reset, so you will be able to go get new weapons and train them and increase your reputation with the gunsmith. On Thursdays is the game developers' weekly blog, maybe hinting at new activities, new multiplayer events, and even the new game that's supposed to come out this year. The weekend is open to Zur, who is the exotic salesman. He sells rare weapons, rare armor that you would normally not find in the repetitive sort of play that you would play during the week. And Trials of Osiris is a very competitive multiplayer event, and it happens every weekend. Every day except for Tuesday, which is when weekly reset happens, there's a daily reset, meaning bounties and other things will reset at the beginning of the day around 2 or 3 p.m. in the morning Central Time. It keeps players in the game and it keeps them playing for the entire week so that they just keep playing until the next thing happens, and then they keep playing, and the next thing happens. Another idea is the fear of missing out, or FOMO. It's a strategy that focuses on the yearly schedule of the game. Planning events and expansions throughout the entire year allows the developer to fill empty, dry content droughts with new quote-unquote content. New is in quotes because lately a cheap way to introduce new content is to recolor old armor or just reintroduce stuff that was back 2 years ago, and they can consider it new. Events in Destiny that have happened in the last 2 years are the 2 Halloween events, a Valentine's Day event, 2 Sparrow Racing League events, sort of like a kart racer sort of thing, a holiday/New Year event, and 2 expansions. So the game, since its September 2014 release, has been very busy. And not just Bungie, but every game studio will release events and games and expansions to overlap with another game or expansion to try to pull their audience back. Games will just try to keep their audience there until they can give more content, and games will even try to overlap on each other so they can compete. The last idea I have is the sunk cost fallacy. This strategy can be used outside of video games as well. It just doesn't have to be video games. It's the idea that you should use an item because you've spent money on said item. Destiny acts in this way by giving you a bunch of activities to do and you not really wanting to do, but because you've spent a lot of money and time in the game, you play on. The example they used in the Reddit post was that you bought a movie ticket and you have to go write a review, but you heard the review is bad, so you really don't want to go see it, but you still push yourself to go see it because you spent the money on the ticket. So while playing Destiny, what happens in your head? Another research source that I found, three main factors make the game addicting. The first is community. It's a sense of being part of something and showing off who you are and what you want to be. Destiny does this tremendously. Having access to the internet has only built this. You can go on Reddit and talk to anyone about it. You can probably go on Facebook. There's hundreds of Facebook groups, and the game developers' own forum pages will also have people on there talking about it. Even in the game, you can color your armor the way you want. You can put the armor together the way you want. You can go and get armor and make it look like you're cool, and also have your abilities be really cool. And people will also like sort of look at you and be like, "Oh wow, that's crazy. What are you wearing?" It just gives you a sense of purpose and sort of personality in the game. The second factor to make a game addicting is the ego, specifically feeding the egos. Players will want to feel like they conquered and controlled parts of the game, and they also want a reward afterward, which makes sense. After a strike, you defeat this big boss, you want a reward, and they will give you those rewards, and they will also give you the rewards to make your ego bigger and make you want to play more, or they'll not give you the reward and say, oh man, I gotta go play that strike again, and you go do that, so you're spending more time in the game. The third factor is skill. Basically, people want to be the best in the game, playing the basic level, you'll learn the basics, and while you continue to play, you'll learn more about the game. So soon, you will be playing as if it's a second nature. People will go into Trials of Osiris, and they will try to go undefeated 9 times, 10 times, 12 times, just so they can say that they did that. They just want to be the best in the game that they can be. So what these games and what the loot in the games do is they release dopamine, and dopamine just really basically is the happy chemical in your head. It's manufactured in the human body. It helps you generate movement in the body and helps you speak, but it's also released when you receive or expect a reward. This tells the brain that when you just received was great, and you should do it again and receive more. Highly addictive drugs like cocaine and heroin boost the amount of dopamine you receive, making it a great feeling the first time you use them. Games will do this where they will introduce you and then show you, hey, you just got this blue weapon. Isn't that really cool? And then you find a purple weapon and then a yellow weapon. And you want more of those, so you'll keep playing and playing. Eventually you'll have 1,000 hours in the game. So the relationship between dopamine and Destiny. Considering that Destiny is a loop-based game, you get lots of stuff while playing, obviously. Your brain will trigger a dose of dopamine when you get your first exotic weapon or piece of armor, because it's different and unusual, and you don't know what it's going to do. So you equip it, and you play around with it, and you really like it. The internet hasn't really helped this effect either, because when you see someone else get a weird item and it looks cool to you, you want said item, making you chase that high someone else had. You may want the great rocket launcher that's in the game, and you say, I want that, and you go and you play and you play and you play, and then you still don't have it, but you still want it, so you keep going and playing. It's dangerous outside of Destiny as well. Lots of other games nowadays rely on RNG, or random number generator, to keep players playing. They'll assign a percentage to an item, and it'll be really low, low enough that you won't see it commonly, but high enough to where it's possible. So it's a very dangerous line people will play with in loot-based games. Um, while researching this, and also watching the game episode of the new Bill Nye series on Netflix, I found out about Restart. Restart is a rehabilitation program for addiction to technology. It also includes video games in its list of addiction. According to the research, they and the American Psychiatric Association have found a disorder that they have called internet gaming disorder. Criteria for it would be withdrawal and symptoms of irritability, anxiety or sadness, unsuccessful attempts of control, continued use of games despite previous problems, lying about how much time you spent in the game, and losing a significant job, relationship, or education opportunity because you've been playing games. I haven't seen this in my life, but I can see it actually being a thing with the way games are played now. To end the presentation, I thought I'd just show you some simple ways to avoid addiction in games, since they are becoming even more addicting, including with the case of mobile and having those games in our pockets 24/7. With the youth and young adults that are in the world, and possibly your children someday, you need to monitor their time and set time limits on consoles. That's an option that is available. You can find great resources online. Just Google it. You can probably find it. And also respect and research the ESRB, and the regulations of the games, and follow their guidelines, because they're good, they're fair guidelines. For adults, if you feel like you need to play a game because it gives you joy, you need to reevaluate yourself. Put the controller down and find a new joy. It could just be hanging out with friends, exercising, club, sports, school, anything. A game isn't worth it if it is the only thing in your life. Thanks for listening.